Today, we'll be exploring Hurricane Irene, one of the most significant Atlantic hurricanes in recent history. This devastating hurricane directly caused 49 deaths as it spread from the Caribbean all the way to Canada while affecting much of the east coast of the United States. Hello, and welcome to Deadliest Disasters, where we cover some of the most devastating events that happened throughout history. Hurricane Irene began as a tropical wave off the coast of Africa in mid-August 2011. By August 20th, the system had organized enough to be classified as Tropical Storm Irene near the Lesser Antilles in the Caribbean. What made Irene particularly dangerous was the perfect storm of conditions that allowed it to strengthen rapidly. Ocean temperatures in the Caribbean that summer were unusually warm, providing abundant energy for the developing system. With minimal wind shear to disrupt its formation, Irene quickly intensified. Hurricanes are categorized on the Saffir-Simpson scale from Category 1 to 5, with 5 being the most severe. Irene would eventually strengthen to a Category 3 hurricane, with winds reaching 120 miles per hour as it passed over the Bahamas, making it a major hurricane. Irene's journey took it on a northward track that would impact multiple countries. After forming near the Lesser Antilles, the storm passed near Puerto Rico on August 21st, bringing heavy rains but remaining offshore enough to spare the island from its strongest winds. By August 22nd, Irene had strengthened and made a direct hit on the Dominican Republic, crossing the northern part of the country before moving toward the Bahamas. It was during its passage through the Bahamas between August 23rd and the 25th that Irene reached its peak intensity as a Category 3 hurricane. After battering the Bahamas, Irene set its sights on the U.S. mainland. The storm made its first U.S. landfall at Cape Lookout, North Carolina on August 27th as a Category 1 hurricane, becoming the first hurricane to make landfall in the United States since Hurricane Ike in 2008. From there, it would continue its destructive path northward, making a second landfall in New Jersey and a third in New York the following day. What made Irene particularly unusual was how far north it maintained its strength. Even after being downgraded to a tropical storm, Irene would go on to cause some of its worst damage in the typically hurricane-safe regions of New England. Before reaching the United States, Irene left significant destruction across the Caribbean. In Puerto Rico, although spared a direct hit, the island still experienced widespread power outages affecting more than 1 million residents. The Dominican Republic saw severe flooding, with over 30,000 people evacuated from their homes. But it was the Bahamas that bore the brunt of Irene's Caribbean impact. As a Category 3 storm, Irene damaged or destroyed hundreds of homes across the island chain. Fortunately, due to effective early warning systems and evacuations, the death toll in the Caribbean was relatively low, with approximately 8 fatalities attributed to the storm. North Carolina became ground zero for Irene's U.S. impact when the storm made landfall on August 27th. The Outer Banks were particularly hard hit, with the storm cutting new inlets through the barrier islands and washing out sections of Highway 12, the region's main evacuation route. Storm surge, which is a wall of water pushed ashore by hurricane winds, reached 7 feet in some areas, causing flooding in coastal communities. Inland rainfall compounded the problem, with some areas receiving over a foot of rain in just 24 hours. Virginia also experienced significant impacts from Irene, with nearly 1.1 million residents losing power and coastal areas experiencing moderate flooding. What made response particularly challenging in these areas was the storm's massive size. Hurricane-force winds extended outward up to 90 miles from Irene's center. While the southern states had experience with hurricanes, it was the storm's unexpected intensity in the northeast that caught many by surprise. As Irene moved north, it transitioned from a hurricane to a tropical storm, but this classification change was misleading. The storm actually became more dangerous in some ways as it interacted with other weather systems. New York City took the unprecedented step of shutting down its entire public transportation system, the first weather-related shutdown in its 108-year history. While the city was spared the catastrophic flooding some predicted, areas of Brooklyn, Queens, and Staten Island did experience significant damage. But it was inland, particularly in Vermont, where Irene revealed its most surprising devastation. The mountainous terrain of New England channeled Irene's tremendous rainfall into narrow valleys, causing flash flooding of historic proportions. Vermont experienced its worst flooding since 1927, with every single river and stream in the state overflowing its banks. The flooding destroyed or damaged over 200 bridges and hundreds of miles of roads, completely isolating at least dozens of towns. National Guard helicopters had to airlift food, water, and medical supplies to these communities in the days following the storm. All told, Hurricane Irene claimed approximately 49 lives across the United States, with many victims caught in flash floods or by falling trees. The financial toll of Hurricane Irene was staggering, with total damage estimates exceeding $15 billion. This made it one of the costliest Category 1 hurricanes on record, demonstrating that a storm's category doesn't always correlate with its destructive potential. Vermont's famous maple syrup industry saw damage to sugar bushes and production facilities, while North Carolina's tobacco and cotton crops were devastated just before harvest season. Recovery varied dramatically by region. While urban areas generally recovered within weeks or months, some rural communities in Vermont took years to rebuild damaged infrastructure. Federal disaster assistance through FEMA provided over $2.5 billion in aid, but many criticized the speed and adequacy of the response. Beyond the human and economic toll, Irene left lasting environmental impacts. Coastal erosion dramatically changed shorelines, particularly along the Outer Banks. Water quality suffered as flooding overwhelmed sewage systems and agricultural runoff contaminated waterways. But the storm also provided valuable lessons. In the years following Irene, hurricane forecasting improved significantly, with particular emphasis on predicting an inland flooding risk rather than just wind speeds. Many municipalities revised their evacuation protocols and infrastructure planning, incorporating lessons from Irene's unexpected patterns. Today's emergency managers emphasize that hurricane preparedness isn't just for coastal residents. Irene demonstrated that inland flooding can pose equal or greater risks than coastal storm surge. Modern preparedness recommendations now emphasize having supplies for at least 72 hours without power or assistance, regardless of how far you live from the coast. Hurricane Irene serves as a powerful reminder of nature's unpredictability and force. While not the strongest hurricane in terms of wind speed, its unusual path, massive size, and tremendous rainfall combined to create widespread devastation across a dozen states. The legacy of the storm lives on in improved forecasting, better emergency management practices, and more resilient infrastructure along the eastern seaboard. The people that experienced the storm will never forget the devastation it caused.
Thanks for watching today's video on this devastating but important historical event. If you found this informative, please hit that like button and subscribe for more historical deep dives. And let me know in the comments what other overlooked historical events you'd like to learn about. Until next time, this has been Deadliest Disasters.